Mr. Bounce by Roger Hargreaves. Mr. Bounce was very small and like a rubber ball. He just couldn't keep himself on the ground. He bounced all over the place. And as you can imagine, that made things rather difficult. Last week, for instance, when Mr. Bounce was out walking, he came to a farm. He climbed over the farm gate, and you can guess what happened next, don't you? He jumped down from the gate and bounced right into the duck pond. Bounce went Mr. Bounce. Splash went Mr. Bounce. Quack with the ducks. The other morning, for instance, Mr. Bounce was in bed. He woke up and jumped out of bed. And you can guess what happened next, don't you? He bounced right up his bedroom door and all the way downstairs. Bounce, 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 bounce. That happens quite often. Which probably happens when Mr. Bounce leaves his bedroom door open every night. After he had picked himself up, Mr. Bounce went inside his house and sat down the sink. Bounce. Mr. Bounce bounced off the chair and banged his head on the ceiling. Bang went Mr. Bounce's head on the ceiling. Ouch, said Mr. Bounce. This is ridiculous, Mr. Bounce thought to himself, rubbing his head. I must do something to stop all this bouncing about. He thought a thought. I know, he thought. I'll go and see the doctor. So after breakfast, Mr. Bounce set off to the nearest town to see a doctor. He was passing a tennis court when he tripped over a pebble. Bounce, he bounced. And he bounced right on the court, and the children were playing tennis. And you can guess what happened next, don't you? The children didn't realize that Mr. Bounce was a tennis ball. And started hitting him with the tennis racket backwards and forwards over the net. Bounce, ooh, bounce, out, bounce, ouch. Poor Mr. Bounce. Wait, why are the words so different? I think they have become paralyzed, I guess. Eventually, one of the children hit Mr. Bounce so hard, he bounced right at the tennis court. Mr. Bounce bounced out the court against the town. Oh dear, he said, feeling sorry for himself. I've been bounced black and blue. I think your McGillicuddy's dead. A bus was coming down the road, and Mr. Bounce decided that was the safest place for him to be down. He got up and sat down, still feeling more a little sorry for himself. The bus drove to town. The bus stopped right outside the doctor's. Mr. Bounce sat down for the bus. And you can guess what happened next, don't you? He didn't sit down on pavement outside the doctor's. Oh no, not Mr. Bounce! He stepped off the bus and onto the pavement and bounced into one of the doctor's windows. Dr. Makiwa was sitting on his desk enjoying his mid-morning cup of coffee. Mr. Bounce sailed through the window and happened. Well, you can guess where he landed, don't you? That's right. Splash went the coffee. Ouch! Squeaked Mr. Bounce. The coffee was so hot. Good heavens! Exclaimed Dr. Makiwell. After the doctor had fished Mr. Bounce out of his coffee and set him on some blotting paper to dry out, he listened to what Mr. Bounce had to tell him. So you see, said Mr. Bounce finally, you must give me something to stop me bouncing about all over the place so much. Thought the doctor. After some thought, Dr. Mickey went into his medicine cabinet and took a pair of tiny red boots. This should do the trick, he told Mr. Bounce. Heavy boots. That should stop the bouncing. Oh, thank you, Dr. Makewell, said Mr. Bounce and walked home where he said it was not bounced. Walked. That night, Mr. Bounce went to bed wearing his heavy boots and he went to sleep. The following morning, he woke up and yawned and stretched and bounced out of bed. And you can guess what happened next. No, he didn't bounce down the stairs. He went straight to the bedroom floorboards and finished up in the kitchen. No boy, that's my Rufus cat. Why is Mr. Bounce some movement character from Mr. Tickle? Mr. Noisy doesn't sell Googles. Google doesn't sell. Facebook. Facebook is taken down, but it said it's back. Along with Instagram. I don't know what to say. Oh, hello there, Zoe. I think you're supposed to talk. Hello, Topo Sticky. Why would you do that? I think he's dead. No. Mr. Noisy is explosive. I think it's some egads. I like a piece of... I think I might redo the observation deck. You